Good evening and welcome to the Central Connecticut Intergroup Speaker Meeting. My name is Deanna and I am an alcoholic. Hi, Deanna.
Hi, Deanna.
Alcoholics Anonymous Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting for our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I have asked Cuppy to read how it works.
Hi, I'm Cuppy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Cup.
How it works: rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, saw through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Thank you, Cuppy.
You're welcome.
And please help me welcome David, our speaker for tonight.
Thank you, everybody. My name's Dave. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi,
Hi,
Dave.
It's really good to be here tonight. I wanted to thank the powers that be that invited me here, and I'm going to share a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope with everybody, and tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I guess I could start with my paper route. When I was about 14 years old, I got a paper route, and I started hanging out with some of the guys down at the pond down the street, and I think that was the first time I really started drinking. I did have one experiment in the backyard in a tent. You know, everybody grabbed a little bit of their daddy's booze from the cabinet, and we stuck them all together. And boy, did I get sick! But the first time, so I remember that. I remember that for the first time drinking ever. But I started hanging out with these guys on my paper route, and they introduced me to a little bit of Budweiser and a little bit of those funny cigarettes. I smoked some of those, but mostly I was a drinker. You know, it was always alcohol for me. So it started, I guess, when I was early 15 years. I was about 15. And I got in trouble a few times in high school. You know, I had a few brush-ins with the law, but then when I went to college, that's when I really got in some big trouble. You know, I got in my first major car accident when I was 20, and I totaled the car my mom gave me, and I got a DWI. And those state police in Rhode Island are not very kind to people driving out on their roads in the middle of the night on a Saturday night, and they wouldn't let me out until my mom came and bailed me out with my brother. And that was 1983. I got in big trouble for that, and I've had quite a few other scrapings, but with the law, but they were always for motor vehicle. I'm just gonna fast forward about 25 years. I got in some more trouble. Early 2000s. My father passed away 2022. I'm sorry, 2004. So it was 22 years ago when my father passed away. I got arrested 3 times during that decade, and I was a wreck at that point when my father passed away. I got in trouble, and I spent a little time in the pokey, you know, with the Connecticut DMV decided that I shouldn't be on the road anymore, and I went in and did a small stint at Cheshire. I left, and I left. I grew up in Cheshire, put it that way. It's a nice town, and I did 45 days then, and then I got in trouble again near the end of 2007. 2008, and that's when I was sentenced to 120 days. And I did that, got out, and then I really tried to quit. You know, with my probation and the loss of license, and you would think that would stop me at that point, but no, there's more. I got in trouble again later on, but I had a plan. And I know it may sound a little crazy, but I had a plan. I'd just ride my bike, and I'd hang out in the garage instead of going out to these other drinking establishments. And so it worked for a while. And then I started hanging around with some of my old fair weather friends, and I ended up going to the hospital. I was in a coma for 32 days, and after I got out, again, I told myself for the 5th or 6th time, I'm never going to do this again. I was in big trouble at that point, you know, with the fam and everything. So my brother came over, and, you know, he's like, we got to get you in some kind of a rehab. And I'm like, oh, no, I can't do that. You know, and I I got to admit, I got my sense of humor back now, but it wasn't very funny at the time. I tell you this story, it was not funny at the time. Um, I went in for 32 days, got out, got my first sponsor, and I really tried AA seriously for the first time, besides the times when they made me go. I was court ordered to go before that, so I decided that that was it. I'm never going to drink again, and it lasted a couple weeks, and then after that, I went back out drinking, but I stayed in the garage. And second time, I went to detox in Middletown. I had a friend of mine give me a ride, and again, I thought I'm never gonna do this again. I must have said that over and over and over, which I think is the definition of insanity, but I didn't know that at the time. So I thought to myself, I'm never going to do that again. And then I went back to I went back to detox again. And after that, I got out. I got my second sponsor. And I tried to do the work. This time it was more as it's laid out in the big book. I got a big book sponsor, which I recommend. And that worked for a while, but I think for me, I don't think I was ready, because I had another slip, and I went out for a little while, and then I went back in the hospital. And when I went back in the hospital, they said, you better quit drinking, or you're not going to make it, And I really, really took it seriously the last time I was in the hospital, because a friend of mine came in to visit me. This other friend of mine came in, and I told him, I'm like, I'm fine. I don't know why I kept saying that. I got this. And I didn't have it. I didn't have anything at that point. I burned my life to the ground again. This time I was very poor shape physically. Although I guess for that 4-year period, I was in very poor physical shape, now that I think back on it. But anyway, that was a little over 20 years ago. And after that hospital stay, the second time, that was in the beginning of 2015. And I got out of that, and then I went back to AA again. This time, after my friend came to visit me in the hospital, I actually looked in the mirror, and I was yellow. So I finally got it through my thick skull that I have a problem, a really bad problem, and I don't know why it took me so long, but some of us have to be more mangled than others, like it says on page 43. One of my favorite quotes in the book. And from that point on, I found a sponsor on the Tuesday night group. There was a speaker meeting in my hometown, and I went up and asked him to be my sponsor, and he knew me. He knew me from the rooms before, and he said, yeah, but he qualified me. He said, are you willing to go to any lengths? And I'm like, yeah. Of course, I'm ready to go to any lengths. And then he asked me, if I have any problems when drinking, do I have any problems stopping drinking or staying stopped? And I said, oh yeah. That was a definite yes. So he told me to read beginning part of the big book with a doctor's opinion. We did a chapter a week, and I finally started to understand that all the instructions of how to do the steps were actually in the big book. Because at that point, before I started doing that with my third sponsor, I thought there was just steps on the wall. It was pretty naive for somebody that I thought was so smart, like myself. I thought I was pretty smart, and not when it came to this. So the only thing I had to change was was my way of thinking. And the only thing I really had to change was everything. So I did the work, and I did a really fearless and thorough fourth step this time. Um, like I said, I'm still very close friends with my first two sponsors. I still talk to them all the time, but there's something about this guy that really started making sense to me. When he was talking, it just made so much sense. So I think it's very important to have a good sponsor for everybody out there that may be new, or anybody who's new to AA. It should be a good fit, and that's what I found with my third sponsor. And I remember when I was done with my fourth step, we did step 5 in 1 hour and 15-minute increments, because he had 2 jobs, family, kids, and so I had to meet him on his, when he was around. And I met him probably 14 or 15 times, went over every single one of my resentments, all my fears, all my past relationships, female, and went over all of those. And after that, I started feeling something. I couldn't really put my finger on it. I finished step 5. I remember I went home and I thought about the first 5 proposals and sat by myself for an hour alone. And it was really quiet. I shut everything off, the radio, phone, TV, which is hard for me, because I never really spent that much time in silence in a very long time. But it was very therapeutic for me to think over, did I forget anything? And I thought about it. I sat in silent meditation for an hour, and I thought about it. And yeah, there was 2 people on my list from 36 years ago when I was a teenager. So I called up my sponsor, and I said, what do I do? He said, write them down. You know how to do it. And like he said it really nonchalant. But for me, I was like, oh, what do I got to do? I was still a little more anxious at the time. But it all worked out great. I just added them in. Next time I saw him, we went over them. And another thing that helped is I started going to this certain type of meeting. And it was suggested by my sponsor that I go to one literature-based meeting, one 12 and 12, and one big book meeting a week. And I found this one meeting that I really liked. And 3 of my friends went up there every Wednesday. And it really helped me out. We had the camaraderie thing going, and I went up there for about 7 years. And I remember when I was new, I just wanted to tell you this part. When I was new, it took a while to figure out the whole, the whole spiritual thing and the whole God thing. For me, it took me until the middle of my amends to figure out that that I really wanted to have a higher power in my life, and I needed a higher power, but I don't really think I had it. So what they told me up on the hill, so to speak, at this meeting is they told me to just do the work now and you understand later. So that's what I did. I didn't really have my white light burning bush moment where lightning bolts were coming in and everything, and I was still kind of skeptical at first, until I finally started doing my step 9, and that's when I also called my sponsor again to get advice on which amends I should do and how I should go about doing them. And he was very helpful in that area of guiding me. And I was about 2/3 of the way done. And I remember I took this road trip. I went to visit my brother in Massachusetts. I talked to my brother one-on-one. I talked to his wife one-on-one. And then I talked to them together. And then I went up to my father's, or the family plot, and went up to talk to my father and read him the letter that I wrote. And that's part of my amends process. And then I went up to visit my friend Chris, who lived in New Hampshire as well. Went up there, And when I came back, I call it the trifecta of amends. That's what I call it. And when I came back, I felt different. And it's kind of hard to put it into words, but when you do this work, when you do the steps, a spiritual awakening is one of the main goals, so you can get over this obsession of drinking. I mean, it's my opinion that they do have medicine for cravings, but the obsession is the hard part. After all the things I've been through, I was in trouble a little bit during that other time period where I skipped the 25 years, but when I got up to age 52, that's when I finally had my spiritual awakening, and I might as well just say it. My sobriety date is November 1st, 2015, and my life has never been better since that point. Once I had my spiritual awakening, I did the rest of my amends on my list, and in the past time I've continued to work with other people. I got involved with service. I got more and more involved with service, which is very rewarding. But the icing on the cake is working with another guy, being a sponsor. And it doesn't always work out exactly as you want, but either way, most of the time he's helping me more than I'm helping him. And sometimes I'm helping him more than he helps me. Just like it says in the chapter, Working with Others, I always found that to be true. There's a lot of things that are absolutely spot on. And a couple things have changed in the last 9 decades. But now I think there's so many things that are still, they're so spot on to this day. And I just wanted to say that. But for me, I can only speak of my experience. Once I did those amends, I felt something. And other people said they saw it in me. And I was like, what? See what, And I think it's one of my friends that I have right here in the room with me, one of my friends. And this other guy, he said, what got into you, Dave? And I said, I don't know. I started going to this meeting. I pointed to this meeting up on the hill. And so he went up there too, and he's one of my best friends. They say stick with the winners. So what I did was I kept going up there. I still go up there every once in a while to this day, but I did want to say the part about my life never been better. Now, I've had a lot of spiritual awakes, little aha moments along the way. I met so many people that I consider very close friends now instead of the fair weather variety. And I did want to say that I really think that I have grown in this program, not just sponsoring people, taking on commitments, I'm chairing meetings. I still go back and make coffee too. There's nothing wrong with that. And I did want to say one more thing. I do think that the universe is a better place right now without me out there driving around like I used to. And the state of Connecticut is a better place too. So I'm just glad to be here so I could share this with you. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Dave, for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. I could really relate to a lot. My first real drinking experience that I remember was the same thing, except one person took a little bit of alcohol out of every bottle of it, put it all together in a coffee can. Yeah, that really doesn't taste very well. But I could really relate to you talking about the more you did the steps and the more that you did the work on you, that your life got better. I didn't get it, and it still kind of pains me to this day that every time there's an issue, I have to look at me. That because I'm the only one I can change, right? So I think that's always been the greatest gift of being sober and kind of having that spiritual awakening and that self-knowledge about myself. And so I appreciate your share. Thank you very much.
I'll go. I'm
Thanks.
Cuppy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi,
Oh.
Cuppy.
Hello.
I've known Dave a long time, and we have a mutual friend in Mickey who passed a few years ago. But he was a guy I used to like to run with. We did a lot of 12-step work together. We'd go to hospice. We'd go down to New Haven to the little Red Deer group and be with other friends and try to pick up a little bit more sobriety every trip. I can remember we'd go down to that place in New Haven to meet a friend who was in the rooms, and she'd bring a group of guys from her little halfway house. And it seemed like it was always so difficult, but because they were new and they were young. And we'd go back to that meeting week after week, and some of the guys would come in off the streets. They just were flip-flopping around. It seemed like every week. It was like, well, I went back out. And it was almost depressing. But Mick and I, on the ride home, we'd always say to ourselves, I'll still gladly take my little pile of junk off the table because it's mine. The familiar junk, And there's a lot wrong with me and a lot wrong with Mick, but these guys are struggling. We were past that stage. Dave talks about the obsession. I was blessed. I mean, I say it a lot at meetings that my drinking history wasn't that bad. So when I put it down, it stayed down. And I was serious about it, and the cravings were gone. They were gone. And I felt I was blessed because I did have that higher power in my life almost from the get-go. So I was blessed, and I had a lot going for me. But this gentleman, this friend of mine, has a lot going for him. And I've seen it in action. I've seen him work in the program with a lot of other people. And what I like to say, he's in it. He's not around it. He's all in. So he's been a good AA friend of mine for a long time. And I'm glad to have him in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Cuppy.
My name is Dave, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi,
Dave.
Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Thanks for sharing, Dave. It's funny when Deanna touched on it. It seems like just about everybody has that same story about all the booze. I had mine when I was 11. And, I hid it out in the woods till I could get it, and bring it over there. But it was funny when I don't even remember if I got drunk then or not. But I knew that. It was like a dragon to me. I knew that there was going to be problems, and it ended up being that way. Like Cuppy, my obsession went pretty quickly. I mean, I petitioned God early on, and I didn't even realize I had done that. And the compulsion obsession left, but there's still a lot of work to do, like you said, and doing the things in the order that they should be. Having a sponsor, my first sponsor, he was just a big raw-boned Irishman. He just didn't take any shit, And that was important for me, because I could get out of control very easily, And and there's you talk about going to jail or prison or whatever, and that's something I never accomplished. But it's one of those yets out there, And I remember I spoke at Cheshire one time, and a friend and I went there, and those doors closed behind me, and I was just scared crapless, And so the sober life has been good, And I'm glad to see I've seen you in service, and I remember you asking a lot of questions about a certain aspect of service, and it was good that you spent the time to ask the questions, So I'm glad you shared tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
So again, let's take a moment to thank Dave for sharing.
Yeah, good job.
And we'll end with the responsibility statement. I am
I'm
responsible
I'm responsible.
when
Anyone,
anyone, anywhere reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA to always be there, and for that I am responsible.